Karate versus Kung Fu. Come on, it's the ultimate martial arts debate, right? It's the one that's been argued on playgrounds and in dojos for, well, forever. So let's finally settle this.
But let's get real for a second. Forget the movies, forget the legends. In a no-rules, straight-up confrontation, who really comes out on top? To get to the real answer, we have to go way deeper than just comparing a few moves.
You see, this isn't just about a punch versus a kick. To really get it, you have to see them as two completely different philosophies. I'm talking two opposing worlds of combat, each one forged by a totally different set of circumstances.
And to do that, we gotta go all the way back to the beginning. The only way to understand how they fight is to first understand where they came from.
Okay, just look at this breakdown. It couldn't be more different. Karate was born on Okinawa, when weapons were outlawed. The goal wasn't about finding enlightenment, it was about immediate, brutal survival. Your body had to become the weapon. But Kung Fu? It grew up in the massive, diverse cultural landscape of China. It wasn't only for fighting, it was a holistic art, a way to develop your mind just as much as your body.
Now, that massive difference in origin leads to two totally opposing mindsets, two different ways of even thinking about what a fight is. It really is the difference between an explosion and a river.
So here's the absolute key. Karate's whole philosophy is built around the decisive finish. The entire art is geared towards one single goal: end the fight with one perfect, overwhelming strike. Kung Fu, on the other hand, is all about controlling the flow. It's not about that one perfect moment, it's about managing the whole fight, knocking your opponent off balance, and controlling the rhythm of the entire battle.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Karate is a controlled explosion. It's all that power, coiled up, waiting for the perfect moment to be unleashed. Kung Fu is the complete opposite. It's a continuous, flowing river that just adapts and moves around any obstacle in its path.
So let's see how these big ideas actually translate into physical movement. Because these mindsets, they literally change the way a person moves and generates power.
This is where we get into the physics of it all. Karate is all about the straight line. You plant yourself in a low, stable stance and you drive power directly from the ground, straight through your body, and bam, into the target. Maximum efficiency. Kung Fu, though, it makes power from circles and rotation. The stances are always shifting, always dynamic, creating torque and momentum. That's what makes it so fluid and, honestly, so unpredictable.
Okay, theory's done. But what happens when these two worlds actually collide? In a real-world scenario, no rules, no ref. Let's put them to the test.
All right, in a sudden fight, karate's big advantage is just terrifying speed and surprise. It is literally designed to close that distance in a blink and deliver a fight-ending shot before the other person even knows what hit them. Especially against someone who just charges straight at you. That linear, explosive power is absolutely devastating.
But what if that first attack doesn't land? Now the fight changes, and this is where Kung Fu starts to shine. Its strength is all about control and adaptability. A good practitioner can manage the distance, totally mess up their opponent's rhythm, and if things get in close, they have this huge toolbox of joint locks, throws, and ways to use an attacker's own force right back at them.
And that kind of specialization points to karate's potential weakness. If that first all-out blitz fails, its direct, straight-line movements can start to get predictable. It can really struggle if the fight gets dragged out and messy, and it just doesn't have as many options for that super close quarters grappling game where its best strikes can't land.
Kung Fu's weakness, though, is a bit different. Often, it's not a problem with the art itself, but how it's taught. This is the big one, the training gap. So many schools get caught up in beautiful, flowing forms instead of functional, pressure-tested sparring. And look, without constant, live, full-contact training, all that brilliant theory, it just stays a theory. And theories tend to fall apart when you get punched in the face.
So, how do we settle this? We look at the data. Modern combat sports, especially MMA, have basically become the ultimate real-world lab for testing what actually works when everything's on the line.
And the verdict from inside the cage is pretty clear. Karate's core ideas translate incredibly well. You've got legends like Lyoto Machida and Georges St-Pierre who used its unique timing, that explosive footwork, and those devastating straight-line attacks to become champions at the highest level. That directness is its greatest strength.
Which, of course, brings us to a really interesting question. If karate works so well, why don't we see traditional Kung Fu having that same success in the modern arena? Why is it so often underestimated? And this, right here, is probably the single most important thing to understand in this whole debate. The problem has never ever been the art of Kung Fu. The problem has always been the method of training. Because when you take Kung Fu and you train it for modern combat, like they do in Sanshu, which is basically combat Kung Fu, it becomes an absolute powerhouse. Just look at fighters like former champion Zhang Wei Li or the legend Kung Li. They mix Kung Fu's fluid kicks and adaptability with high-pressure, full-contact sparring and wrestling, and they show the world what this art can really do.
So, after all that, the origins, the philosophies, the modern proof, what's the final verdict? Well, it was never really about the name of the style, was it? It all comes down to the fighter, and maybe more importantly, the quality of their training.
But maybe there's one last metaphor that just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole thing. Karate is the sword, and Kung Fu is the water.
Think about it for a second. A sword is direct, it's sharp, it's designed to win with one clean, decisive strike. But water is adaptable. It flows around things, it changes its shape, and it can overwhelm you not with a single hit, but by changing the entire battlefield itself.
One art wants to master the perfect moment. The other wants to master the entire flow of battle. One is the power of the explosion. The other is the power of the river. So the real question isn't which one is better, it's which power would you choose?